gets tiring, especially when you moderate a number of these sort of platforms. But before we start off, let me just put in a quick apology. You might see me wearing shades. These are actually not shades, but these are prescription glasses. As a father, my little one stepped on my actual spectacles this morning. So I'll have to wait for about a week and a half before I can replace those. So I would just like to apologize, especially for the protocol that's here, that the shades that I'm wearing are prescription indeed, and they are not intentional. Your Excellency Sinica Antila, the EU Ambassador to Namibia, Mr. Mbiuta Yanjarakana, the Executive Director of MICT, any member of Parliament present here, of course, leaders of industry, Alisa Mupolo, Chief Executive Officer of Powercom, Mr. Federico Links, researcher, quite a highly rated researcher in our country, Ms. Helen Vuslu, representing CRAN, and the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Emilia Ngikembwa, Dr. Cedric Shihomeka, representing the University of Namibia, Vivette Ritman, also, of course, a serious activist and social entrepreneur in the space. All protocol observed. Thank you so much for making time out to join us, I think, for this very, very exciting launch of the Digital Foundation of Namibia. And before I say anything else, I would really just like us to just give a brief recognition for one of the driving forces behind the establishment of this organization, Nashilongo Gervasius. I think the reason why I'm pointing that out is we've seen over the last few months, and you would concur with me, that Namibian women have really risen to the occasion over the last 2-3 years, taking up powerful spaces within our society, from private space, within banking, telecommunications. I mean, we're talking about two CEOs, one here personally and one being represented by one of our senior staff members here as well. Nashilongo has really been running around with the Internet Society of Namibia and a number of other institutions, making sure that ICT policy really becomes part of the center conversation in the mainstream public discourse. So can you please just give a short round of applause in recognition of that effort. Our program today is going to be very short. It's going to be two-part. The first thing will be the launch of the foundation. And then immediately after that, it will be the first initiative of the foundation that will be part of the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum for 2021. The panel discussion that will be looking at unpacking internet access in Namibia, live stream, of course, on Facebook as well as YouTube. Under this panel discussion, we look at a number of issues. Some of the focuses will, of course, be around the regulatory environment in the country. Is it conducive for inclusiveness? The issue around accessibility of data. You know, we have the West African Sea cable system that landed, but we still haven't seen fiber to home. What are some of those impeding factors that we need to look at to make sure that inclusion is a thing that we reach in the next few years in the country? So we'll have a short welcoming remarks and the background of DFN from Mr. Erke Hepinge, chairperson of DFN. Then we'll have the special remarks by Her Excellency Sinica Antila, the EU Ambassador to Namibia. That will be followed by the keynote address by the Accounting Officer of the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Mr. Mbiuta Yanjarakana, Executive Director, and of course, always a public servant that has always been available to us whenever we need him at platforms such as this. And we appreciate that you always make time out to be present at these events. And of course, a short photo opportunity, and then we'll move on to the first activity of the newly launched organization. And I think that just speaks to the amount of hard work that Nashilongo and her team has put into establishing the institution. And then, of course, closing remarks by the DFN director herself, Nashilongo Gervasius. So without wasting any time, please give a round of applause to Mr. Erke Hepinge, the chairperson of DFN.
I'm not sure whether it will be okay for me to remove my mask for regulation's sake. Thank you, Ricardo. Nevertheless, I hope everybody can still hear me fairly well. Your Excellency, the Ambassador of the European Union to Namibia, Ambassador Sinika Antila, the Executive Director of the Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology, Mr. Mbeuta Wanjara Kana, the dignitaries from various entities, special guests that we have invited, Ms. Helen Voslo from CRAN, Ms. Alisa Ampolo, CEO of Powercom, Federico Links, our researcher from IPPR, and of course, our moderator, Mr. Ricardo Huajose. All the dignitaries and guests that have been invited, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the official launch of the Namibia, or the Digital Foundation of Namibia, in short, DFN. So my homework or task is really nice and simple, very short. It is simply to introduce to you the Digital Foundation of Namibia, a short overview of what this foundation is about, where it's coming from, and what it aims to achieve, and how it fits into the space of the digital environments as we know them. So myself is Erki Haipinge. I am associated with the University of Namibia as a lecturer there. And most of other members of the same foundation also come from various institutions, including the same institution. So without further ado, I'll just invite you to take you through a bit of the presentation to just give you a snapshot of the foundation's goals and what our mission is and what we stand for, and how it also fits in within today's event. So this is a non-profit organization, non-government organization that is really just geared towards developing the digital competence of Namibian citizens. Of course, we are also seeking to go beyond that, as you will see later in our vision. So as a foundation, we see digital competence as a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitudes with regards to the use of technology to perform tasks, solve problems, communicate, manage information, collaborate, create and share content effectively. Not only create and share content, but also do that effectively and appropriately. And most importantly, especially nowadays, do that securely, because we do know that we have challenges of security, online security and privacy online at the moment. But also to address issues of critically assume, consume, and share content. And of course, do that creatively, independently, and especially one area that is of special interest to me or focus to me, to ethically share information and engage ethically online. So when we talk about digital competence, that is what we have in mind. That is sort of the package of digital competence that we are referring to. So what is our vision? The vision of our foundation is to be a leading digital competency facilitator in Namibia and the SADC region. What we mean by facilitator is basically that we are not per se a training or a training provider, but we are an entity that will collaborate with persons, agencies, and anyone else who can offer these services. So we are a facilitator. We feel that this is a space that has got a bit of a void that needs to be filled within the country. And that is why we see ourselves as a facilitator of this process. And basically our mission is to empower Namibian communities to participate meaningfully in the digital era. When we look at our Namibian policies, especially Vision 2030, it talks about Namibia becoming an industrial country, and there is a lot of emphasis on knowledge economy and access to information. Well, we are moving towards that particular goal. So what we would like to achieve as a foundation is that we do not only want people to have access to information and digital spaces, but we want them to meaningfully engage in the digital era. And one of the meaningful engagement that one can consider is inclusion. And that is why we really feel that there is an intersection between the theme that we are addressing today and the mission of our foundation. We have our core values, which basically is what guide us in our engagements and our strategies, and those are participation. We value the idea that all Namibians have the right to participate online in the digital environment. We also would like people to be self-reliant in the sense that they should be able to evaluate information on their own and make decisions on their own. But access to information does not automatically give people these skills. So that is a value that also informs our strategies. We also consider Ubuntu to be a value of importance to us. Basically, the idea that we are all one, and that when the needs of everybody has been taken care of, then everybody is taken care of. Basically, for us, Ubuntu means that we need to care for the other. When you look at the profile of members of this foundation, it is normally academics or people from the digital space, people who you'd consider well-versed and have access to these digital platforms. But how do we make sure that the ordinary citizens also get to a piece of the cake to participate in the same? So it is that spirit of Ubuntu that has inspired us to reach out and even establish this foundation, so that digital participation does not only get limited to those in towns, those that are digital savvy, those that have access to ICTs, but that we find ways in order to expand access to these spaces beyond that profile. And of course, we have 21st century skills. These are the skills of innovation, collaboration, critical thinking. We know them. But we do not always apply them when we use digital tools or when we are participating in the digital space. So that is why it's also one of our guiding values. And of course, we see ourselves as advocates for participation in the digital spaces that is inclusive, as I have mentioned earlier. And as a foundation, of course, we will have services that we aim to offer. And this is to develop digital competence amongst communities. And as I mentioned earlier when I was referring to our mission, is to make use of stakeholders and partners that can offer these services. And we are basically going to be the facilitators of these activities. We will offer consultancy services in the digital space, and of course, also offer research on digital issues, offer training, and also engage or run community support initiatives that have to do with empowering communities to make use of digital resources and tools effectively. And of course, as I'm sure the panel will address later, we all do know that when the more people we have participating in the digital environment, the better it is for everyone. It has repercussions, positive repercussions for business, for commerce, for e-governance, and all other activities that what we do know take place. So basically, I can say that in summary, the Digital Foundation really focuses on what we call digital citizenship, which for us is really the ability to engage positively and critically, but also competently in the digital environment, drawing on the skills of effective communication, effective creation, and to practice forms of social participation that are respectful of human rights and the dignity through responsible use of technology. I think we are all familiar with the cases or incidents or issues we have come across, whether it is nationally, internationally, of challenges we have of people accessing digital spaces or digital tools. But because of lack of some of these attitudes or skills, then we observe challenges. For example, we have issues of cyberbullying. We have issues of unethical sharing of content. We feel that one of the reasons why those things are happening is basically lack of appropriate engagement in training and education to strengthen the skills of the people that are going online. And we do know that for one to create an account online, a social media account, or to access a digital device, we do not have a course that they do first before we give them permission to. So we have everybody going online at different levels of competency on how to use those tools, both literacy, but also ethically. So this is why we as a foundation will focus on digital citizenship as a really focus for us in order to strengthen this aspect for Namibian citizens. So in short, really, that is the background of the foundation. And as a foundation, we are really honored to be associated with this DRIF 21 event. And we look forward to the exciting and fruitful panel discussion that is coming up later. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Short and sweet, and I think quite concise there as well. If we look at the role that I think the support that we have received from the international community, and like my senior, Mr. Wanjarakana always likes to say that we are a child of international solidarity as a country. The support that we receive from the European Union can never be overstated, especially in the civil society space. And that's why I'm really excited to welcome Her Excellency Sinica Antila, the EU Ambassador to Namibia, to just give us a short special remarks. Round of applause for her, please.
Thank you. Maybe if you allow me, I remove my mask so that you can hear me. Thank you, Master of Ceremony. And the ED of the Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology, Erkki, chairperson of this new digital foundation of Namibia board, Ms. Nashilonga Namchuwe, founder of the Internet Society and consultant for the Digital Foundation of Namibia, distinguished members of the technology industry in Namibia, distinguished participants from government, private sector, civil society, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of today's event. Thank you so much. Let me start by congratulating the Digital Foundation of Namibia on your establishment and important task, namely promoting digital skills and competence development, as well as inclusive digital citizenship for all Namibians. Very interesting presentation by Erkki just now. I am glad to see that apart from Internet Society, with whom I am familiar with already before, new organizations such as the Digital Foundation of Namibia are springing up in this space. Very good development here. We furthermore applaud Digital Foundation of Namibia for hosting their very first event, which is the Namibia session of the Pan-African Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum, DRIF 21. And this, I understand, is in partnership with Paradigm Initiative and different partners such as Ford Foundation, Kingdom of the Netherlands, and so on. And also the theme to be discussed, unpacking internet access to in Namibia, is very, very relevant and timely. And I look forward to discussions. The ongoing COVID-19 crisis has shown us the centrality of digital connectivity, technologies and services to all of our economies everywhere in the world. Digitalization, therefore, along with our response to climate change, is a top priority for the European Union. And we intend to lead the transition to a healthy planet and a human-centric digital world. The use of digital technologies is transforming our economies and societies at unprecedented speed and scale. At the same time, it creates great commercial and socio-economic opportunities as well as pressing challenges. Digitalization has furthermore been recognized as a critical enabler for the achievement of the 2030 Agenda and its sustainable development goals. Digital technologies have the potential to provide social benefits in sectors such as governance and public administration reform, education, agriculture, energy, trade, environment, and water, amongst others, almost everywhere throughout what we do. The European Union is already collaborating with Namibia on digitalization and supporting sectors in this respect. For example, Namibia is part of what is called GLASI project of the European Union Council and the Commonwealth on cybersecurity. EU support to Namibia's performance management system entails automation of the process to enhance and ease the implementation of the performance management. We are also involved in supporting efforts to establish a digital and integrated management information system for social protection in Namibia, so that people are able to access social grants, pension, and healthcare support. It is clear that in all these areas, digitalization promotes socioeconomic development. We have all seen how important e-learning is for school children and students alike. This became very, very clear now during the pandemic. We are at the moment, in fact, programming for our programs for the 7 years to come. And we are also programming further our support to education as one focal area. And we are engaging, we are planning, we are at quite initial stage, but we are planning with our own institutions, but also EU member states in our Team Europe initiatives, for instance, to further support e-learning in Namibia. When technology enables business transactions to take place on the internet more, SMEs should be able to benefit of it and continue doing business even through times that are not easy, like now. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the urgent need for a wide use of e-commerce by Namibian businesses and consumers to keep the economy afloat and to limit the impact of rising unemployment. In this respect, EU works closely with the Namibia Trade Forum and various other organizations to identify and support some priority e-commerce interventions such that could support the growth and economic sustainability of Namibian SMEs. Here, the first step will be to do a readiness assessment on the status quo and challenges of e-commerce in Namibia. Ladies and gentlemen, access to information and press freedom are, of course, vital to empower people in all areas. And here I must say now, hats off to Namibia for remaining a beacon of media freedom as the country retained its top position in Africa and 24th in the world, according to the Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index. Very good, congratulations. Something that we are all proud of, even us who are working here. We are also working because World Press Freedom Day is coming soon, and we are also supporting the youth newsrooms event. We collaborating with the NASTA and supporting that one also. As you well know, today 46% of the globe, 3.5 billion people, remain digitally unconnected. The digital divide remains a key challenge both across and within regions and countries. The EU wants to continue to build partnerships, including connectivity partnerships, thereby promoting digitalization, which in turn will contribute to achievement of the SDGs. The EU's external investment plan includes digitalization as a priority and provides guarantees to loans for the digital transformation of the EU neighborhood and the African continent especially. To proceed with this transformation and to fund eligible projects, we need all hands on deck. This includes government, donors, private sector, and civil society, everybody to be involved. Ladies and gentlemen, while trying to tap the potential and benefits of digitalization to the maximum, we at the same time have to be aware of the risks involved. I think Erkki already mentioned something. We have to have legislation in place to ensure data protection. We have to take action to ensure cybersecurity. We have to fight misinformation and disinformation. So big data, algorithms, and blockchain can provide a lot of common good when these preconditions are in place, and the awareness of the users of internet, social media, and digital tools is on top of these issues. I have understood that Namibia is working to develop her cybersecurity and data protection environment. This will be very important. Raising the awareness of the population is equally important, an area where organizations like yours can really play an important role. In conclusion, we need to always bear in mind the importance of a human-centric approach leading to an inclusive and fair digital transformation. In addition, very often people need a change mindset and get a digital mindset to harness digital tools towards success and transformation. All of us can play a role to assist people in knowing how to use technology, understanding its benefits and risks, and using it to improve the quality of our daily lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I don't think the applause is loud enough for our position. World Press Freedom Day. Exciting times coming up. Exciting times. I'm really, really excited about that one. The Plus 30 conference, the Vintage Plus 30 conference that will be taking place in the next 2 weeks here. It's something that we really need to be proud of as a country. And I'm pretty sure our next speaker will, of course, also expound on that as well. That's the Executive Director of MICT, Mr. Mbiota Wanjarakana. Please give him a round of applause.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, Seneca Until Ambassador of the European Union to Namibia, Mr. Erkki Haipinge, Chairperson of the Digital Foundation of Namibia, and all the directors and members of the foundation, other dignitaries invited and present. The one thing that COVID-19 has not yet introduced is the way we express our happiness through rounds of applause. We are still hand-driven. Perhaps the digital society will find a new way of doing that. It's indeed a very good afternoon, a very quiet afternoon, when some people somewhere who have been playing to the camera this afternoon are denied playing to the camera, and hopefully they will be speaking to issues that affect our society. Because NBC has started its late lunch this afternoon. There's no broadcasting in the country. But of course, with digitalization, information dissemination and communications of societies still continues through streaming and other things. It's indeed a distinctive honor to deliver the official keynote address on the launch of the Digital Foundation of Namibia, as well as the inaugural event of hosting the Pan-African session of the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum for the year 2021. It is evident that we are at a crossroads in society where technology has become a major aspect of our lives. Yes, digital coverage does not effectively include all, but so are the digital skills that are not enough to uplift individuals and society development-wise. Now, the sun rises from the east and sets in the west, and so are generations. Not necessarily that the generations come from the east and end in the west, but in my community, from times since I was born, the departed were never buried in the east of a homestead, but on the west. I don't know what that signified. All I'm illustrating is the fact that for us to really create digital societies, we start with the children. If every garage in any suburb neighborhood can become a digital space club for the young ones in the afternoons to be guided through online platforms, I'm sure the digital society will be realized sooner than would otherwise be anticipated. ICT has been declared a priority by the government of the Republic of Namibia and cemented by the creation of the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology. That's a grand statement, but what is the real life? The real life, we wouldn't have an NBC strike this afternoon, because it's one of the elements that the key pillars in informing our society. When we cannot take good care of the human resource at a national broadcaster, then it's a grand statement that we are not living up to. I'm speaking the truth, but not being critical of anything. The ministry was created in 2008 with the mandate of, it was actually the 8th of April 2008, with the mandate of laying the foundation for accelerated use, another grand statement, and development of ICT in Namibia. I'm saying that because the directorate responsible for ICT development in the country, that should actually propel the energy in society by putting on the table and in real life policies and legislative frameworks. Its budget is a mere 8 million Namibian dollar, inclusive of everything. Even the sneezing of an individual operative in that directorate. And I'm saying that to speak to the fact that the acceleration is a grand statement that is not resourced. National documents such as Vision 2030, National Development Plans, and Harambee Prosperity Plans highlight the country's expectations. In fact, aspirations first before expectations. And in this regard, and appropriate programs and projects have been developed and are implemented to ensure that Namibian citizens benefit from advances made in ICT. But implemented is an understatement, because with so skilled budgetary resource for the driver who should be on the driving seat, how can we speak realistically and not bravely to say we are doing that. I'm highlighting these issues for our extended families, the international community, to realize how symbiotic we still remain, particularly in an area and space such as digital emancipation. Ladies and gentlemen, as you might be aware, the ministry has a compendium of ICT legislations, some of which have really become outdated. They have outlived the lifespan of a primary school learner. The ministry has, legislations and the regulatory framework, which creates a conducive environment for the ICT sector and continues to amend and review these laws and policies and develop new ones to respond to technological advances and other emerging issues. I would like to highlight the projects that the ministry is currently busy with, which are due for completion this year, 2021. And we would like to continue thanking the international community, because given that meager budgetary provision for that directorate, we have by and large relied on international partners and international and local partners to realize our end needs. The 2013 Data Protection Draft Bill has been enhanced to conform to regional, continental, and international conventions. Both the data protection and cyber crime bills have been approved in principle. Now, that does not energize delight, because this approval in principle does not speak to efforts that were only undertaken yesterday. These are efforts that have been drawing on over years. Expectations have been made elastic without end. Like, for instance, I hate to hear somebody saying, we are busy attending to that. Because busy attending to that means busy doing nothing. It's equivalent to busy doing nothing, because you cannot show that I'm busy attending to that because in the morning, this is where I was, midday, this is where I am, in the evening, this is where I'm going to end. That English word, busy doing that, in the pipeline. This pipeline has remained endless. Many people have seen the rays of the sun and left the sun shining when they were recalled upstairs by the Almighty. With that pipeline still continuing. Access to Information Bill is before the Parliamentary Standing Committee on ICTs and Innovation. Just as I was driving here, a colleague in the ministry sent an inquiry to say, when is the minister retabling the Access to Information Bill? Because the legal counsel we received from Parliament was that since the bill was passed to the committee before the committee was established, there was need for retabling. But the good news is that we are not going to have anything called retabling. What we are expecting is for the parliamentary committee to hit the ground running. So I hope Honorable Modestus Amutsa, who is the chairperson of this parliamentary committee, can actually have good news for the expectant citizens who want to see this bill really come to fruition. That as it may, the bill may actually be passed by Parliament. There is also the bigger beast in the room that becomes the implementation. You will have to have regulations, you will have to have staff, you have to have other resources. We cannot estimate how long that will take. The amendments to the Communications Act have been approved in principle by Cabinet. It is becoming another version of busy, approved in principle by Cabinet and referred to the Cabinet Committee on Legislation for scrutiny before they are tabling in Parliament. Now, why does that become so draining? Cabinet committees have schedules on when to meet, but they don't have schedules on when to meet to make the quorum. So that's another challenge. So the ministry may work and with stakeholders may work very hard to bring to the table bills to be scrutinized, but the other power, our powers end there, and then there are those other issues. The Electronic Transactions Act has been promulgated. At least this is not approval in principle. That's Act number 4 of 2009. Ooh, 2009. 2019, yes. 2019, yes. This act recognizes electronic transactions in Namibia, and it is operational except for certain provisions which depend on the council to be appointed. Another. The council to be appointed, there has to be resources to make the council, once appointed, a living reality, to work. Those resources, as I stand here, at least I was, like all of us in this room, I was not born from a society that tells untruths. So as we stand here, those resources are not there. But we remain hopeful and optimistic as land of the brave, because we are a child of international community. We know the international community and other partners will come and take us by hand halfway. So hopefully we are going to make that end meet. Following Cabinet's approval to develop the National Cybersecurity Strategy and Cybersecurity Awareness Plan, the Ministry has advanced in this regard and will continue working with key stakeholders to finalize the same. The National Waste Electronic and Electronic Equipment Management Policy and Implementation Action Plan, which aims at providing comprehensive guidance for the efficient and effective management of electronic and electrical waste, has been finalized and are in the final stages of approval. The implementation will commence during this financial year. Following the approval and launch of the National Broadband Policy, the Ministry with its stakeholders are overseeing the implementation of this policy and its implementation plan action plan to ensure that the set targets are achieved. The development of the National Digital Strategy, which was approved by Cabinet, has commenced and will be finalized within the current financial year. The Namibian government has prioritized the achievement of universal service and access, especially in unserved and underserved areas, as stipulated in the Communications Act, which provides for the establishment of the Universal Service Fund to be managed by the regulator. As a ministry, we value our relationships with stakeholders in the ICT ecosystem to consistently work together with the intention of realizing our aspirations. Stakeholders should therefore rally behind and practically support the ministry in ensuring that the country is responsive to ICT advances and trends and heed to the call for improvement of sector-based development, expansion, and modernization of communications infrastructure. We are therefore pleased to welcome on board Digital Foundation of Namibia, this exciting and vibrant family, and we are looking forward to working together, particularly in the areas of advocacy, capacity building, and awareness creation. Awareness creation because hand in hand with competency, there is this monster in the room called fear, which we fear. It's fear that you cannot see, but we fear that fear. So awareness will assist greatly in unleashing the energy and inherent power and capacity of our citizens. And as I said earlier, particularly if we start from the grassroots, the children, because even as I stand here, when my brothers and sisters who are called my children are not in the house, I cannot watch news because I don't know how to switch on the television. This is nothing but the truth. If they go to bed early, I join them in going to bed early because I can't watch TV And that's nothing but the truth. I cannot switch on the stove. If it's a school holiday and they have gone to the village, I should find ways. The fast food shops have a reliable client in me, because I don't know where to switch on the stove. But they know, they are the ones who are actually connecting me when I have to be on Skype. Nothing but the truth. I need to glorify them because that's their real world. Well, I'm thinking of a donkey or a cow in the village. They think of these things. They actually go and navigate to find the ropes into doing these things for themselves and for us. Now my notebook has decided otherwise. The development and the nurturing of sustainable human capital development in digital skills nationally. Those are the areas for which we will need ardent support. ICT research and development and many more. And on your behalf and the Ministry of ICT, I was indeed honored to launch the Digital Foundation of Namibia into a working operation and vehicle in Namibia and the ICT sector in particular, and declare the foundation officially launched. And happy that you are hitting the ground working with the hosting of the Namibia session of the Pan-African Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum for the year 2021, with your partners, Paradigm Initiative as supported by the Ford Foundation, OMIAD Network, Open Society for West Africa, the US government. Welcome to the ICT family. We wish you a success in fulfilling your vision, which is to be a leading digital competency facilitator in Namibia and the SADC region. I want to lay emphasis on that, in the SADC region. And the SADC region. Let Namibia be first and lead. After all, we have the coolage of the ocean, and therefore the entire SADC is in this direction, and we are from the cool, except Angola and South Africa. But if we decided to wake up early, like I have in our age-mate club, colleagues are condemning me for waking up at 12 midnight and starting to addressing issues in the club. They ask you, when do you go to bed? I keep telling them, I have listened properly, that there is a peaceful and eternal rest when that day comes. So I'm not an ardent lover for sleeping. May God bless the Digital Foundation of Namibia.
Thank you very much. And we shall celebrate accordingly after the panel discussion. The opening of, no, only with soft drinks. I see some people are getting excited. No, only soft drinks. All right, for now, can I please ask Her Excellency, as well as Ms. Anjarakana and the board members of the Digital Foundation to please come to the front so that we can have a quick picture opportunity in front of the banners here. And then we proceed, of course, to our conversation for this afternoon. Please join me in front here.
Social distancing.
Is it possible for us? Or must I also move? It's up to you.
Or we can do it on stage, but I need the banners behind at least. So is it that this moves or this moves?
Just move that. That's quick.
I think yes.
Need more banners?
I think maybe we need more because of social distancing. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe while they're setting up, I think then we'll have the chairperson, Mr. Jarakana, and the ambassador. Yeah. Okay, then we will just stand at the back. So maybe you need to stand here. Yeah, we will stand behind.
Maybe the chairs. Is it three of them first?
Oh, okay.
Is it just three of them first, then everybody else, or is it all together?
Yeah, let's.
That's good. We will move on to the panel discussion, but before we start, we've got an apologies from the EU ambassador that has to attend to an equally important engagement and unfortunately won't be able to join us for the panel discussion. But I would just like to call it to the front with the chairperson of DFN just for a small token of appreciation. Ooh, okay, now that's a big token of appreciation for making time out to join us today. There we go. Round of applause for her, please. Thanks. All right, so can I please ask our panelists now to get on stage for the panel discussion? Mr. Federico Links, editor of Fact Check. There we go. That's the one right there. There's no particular order. Or I think you're getting the microphones ready for the discussion. I'd of course also just like to welcome our online audience that's joining us on Facebook as well as YouTube. Thank you so much for staying with us throughout the launch and of course for joining us for the panel discussion. Can a panelist, of course, also make sure that the mobile devices are switched off or on silent? Comrade Edie. Okay, so everybody has their microphone, yeah? Fantastic. So no sharing of mics. We are trying to make sure that we adhere to the COVID regulations as much as possible. Somebody said here earlier on, Ricardo, where's your mask? Mine is here. As you've seen, all the speakers had their masks on, so fortunately there hasn't been any exchange of, I don't want to give the details of that. But nonetheless, thank you very much once again for joining us. This is the second part of our program, the first initiative of the Digital Foundation of Namibia, the newly launched foundation. And that is, of course, about the panel discussion as part of the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum 2021 or DRIFT 21 taking place today for the next hour and a half. Now, the session is titled Unpacking Internet Access in Namibia. The panelists that are joining us, Mr. Mbiuta Njarakana, Executive Director of the Ministry of Information and Communication Technologies, as representing the government of Namibia. Ms. Alisa Mupolo, Chief Executive Officer of Powercom, and of course also Twitter celebrity in Namibia. Dr. Cedric Shiomeka, Senior Lecturer of Educational Technologies at UNAM, the University of Namibia. Ms. Helen Foslu, Head of Research and Communications at the Regulatory Authority of Namibia, CRAN. Mr. Federico Links, Editor of Fact Check Namibia and Digital Rights Researcher. And of course, myself, Mr. Ricardo Tlagosat, Media and Communication Personality. I'll be moderating this session. Now, Unpacking Internet Access in Namibia. This session is held in partnership with Paradigm Initiative and is our country session for the annual Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum, which is currently taking place in 12 African countries since April 12th and ending on April 30th. So this is now part of a continental drive that's taking place. And we are really, really glad to, of course, also have our continental viewers that are joining us online. Now, in bringing our focus on unpacking internet access in Namibia, we start by drawing your attention to the ICT Development Index of 2017 of the ITU, which has ranked the country number 118th out of 176 countries that were researched. Now, this is, of course, also an improvement in terms of our previous ranking, but 118 out of 176 still shows that there's a lot of improvement that we need to do. Another statistic, I think, which is of interest to look at here is the issue around the Inclusive Internet Index of the Economist Business Intelligence 2021 that ranks us 102 out of 120 countries. So we are still in the hundreds, which shows that there still needs to be a considerable amount of improvement that we need to do in as far as access and inclusion is concerned. So without wasting any time, let me put forward my first question to the panel. And really, this one is really not focused on anybody in particular, and I would want each and every one of you to just answer this one as you highlight your work and where it intersects with access to the internet. Mr. Links, perhaps we can start with you.
Is it on? Yes. It's on, right. Yeah, I mean, part of what we do at the IPPR, I mean, we are focused on producing knowledge through research and trying to influence, you know, in some way, policy and regulation through evidence-based positions that we try and generate through our work, through briefing papers, research reports, articles, and the like. So that is basically in a broad sense. In terms of, you know, digital rights, what we are busy doing now, we just started a project with the Global Digital Rights Organization, Global Partners Digital, as part of a multi-country initiative project around making sure that cybercrime, cybersecurity, and data protection laws respect human rights best practice and the human rights standards. So what we'll be doing is monitoring the you know, sort of this glassy process is underway. The texts, the cybercrime bill text, and the data protection texts that are coming, that will be coming out of these drafting processes, and sort of trying to see whether they assess whether they meet sort of international cybersecurity best practice and data protection best practice. I mean, and so far, I mean, we've seen with the glassy process around the data protection bill, the initial drafts, I mean, we sort of find that in that realm, Namibia is moving in the right direction in terms of respect for the human rights standards that are sort of the best practice out there. In the cybersecurity, around cybersecurity, I mean, we would like to still engage around the initial text in cybersecurity bill, as well as the national cybersecurity strategy and cybercrime strategy that the executive director spoke about, and see to what extent that will are also respecting of human rights standards nationally and globally. So that's one project that we have just kicked off and will run for the next 2 years. In terms of our fact-checking project, what we are aiming to do through that, in not just working in the space of debunking disinformation, and especially social media, sort of the disinformation that comes through social media and messaging platforms such as WhatsApp, but also providing training in terms of social media verification, trying to, with various sort of stakeholders, civil society, journalists, bloggers, and we want to also do this with government public relations people this year, to provide that sort of training where in the sort of the digital literacy, the media and information literacy space, to fill a space where we feel there is a very real need in terms of social media and general online verification and how people conduct themselves on the internet and social media. And of course, then there are some other sort of affiliated and associated projects that we also are involved in with the University of Johannesburg, around myself, around looking at issues of surveillance in the context of cybersecurity and cybercrime, also part of a multi-country Southern Africa project. And and what is happening in the digital surveillance space, and sort of watching what's happening around the Communications Act and that sort of thing. So those are sort of, in short, the areas that we are working in at this point in time and into the next, into the medium and longer term around in the digital space.
Comrade Edie?
Well, in a constitutional democracy dispensation as ours, as servants of the people, government should actually be listening more, talking less, and doing more, because citizens expect delivery. They don't expect the music of talk. That's not the contract that government has with the citizens. And with the sea or body of knowledge and support that we receive from stakeholders, local and international, particularly at the formative stages of legislation and policy, that's where we need to listen more and talk less. In as much as we may have our share in the body of knowledge, as servants, the body of knowledge surrounding us as functionaries of government and servants of the people is much larger than ourselves, the space we occupy, in as much as from being a servant, you graduate into being an authority. But you should always bear in mind that your cardinal calling is being a servant and not the power that breaks. As the previous speaker has indicated, monitoring and ensuring that we speak and keep to the dictates of, we don't make Namibia, the Namibian society, as an island in isolation, that we move along with other societies. We respect human rights, not as a courtesy, but as a quality that we should aspire and keep to if our citizens are to enjoy the fruits of the work that we do. And when we say citizens here, the world has become a village, and therefore you cannot only talk to Namibian citizens. Even a person who has a flight stopover in Namibia should feel being protected, being in a safe space, and not see any abrupt or disruptive transit through our country. And the same should apply to Namibians operating in other spaces. As I indicated, it's a pity that at this level nations seem to develop from a certain layer upward and not downward, so much that the young generations are left out. They are left out in an area or space, whereas the minority, who are the middle-aged and senior citizens, are the ones who call the shots. And whereas our destinies at that level are to be short-lived naturally, and the destinies of the young are the ones that are to be long-lived, yet they are left behind, they are left out. And the crux is that it's very rare that we realize we are leaving the young and vulnerable out. When we are into this bus and enjoying the journey, little do we look behind. And I think that is the challenge, that as Namibia, particularly a small population as we are, we should have no space for leaving the young behind and out. We should carry them along. A parent would always hold a toddler by the hand.
Comrade Edie, can you just hold the mic a little bit?
Hold a toddler by the hand to ensure it comes along. But that's not the journey that we do in practical sense, particularly with governance, with legislative development. cartoons and other elements can assist the young minds to follow what the senior or elder minds can grasp, so that in the end, we come together as society. And I think that's an area that stakeholders such as researchers and monitors of what we are doing should also pay attention to. So I think I would like to end there.
Oh, no, that's fine for now. Mr. Mopola, please just highlight your work's intersection with access to internet.
Thank you, Ricardo, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for having Parcom. Before I unpack internet access from an infrastructure point of view, to which Parcom plays a critical role, I would like to acknowledge that actually today it's a momentous day because it's actually the International Day for Girls in ICT. And just to recognize all the women out there who are doing marvelous job to advance the ICT sector and to sort of applaud them to continue doing what they're doing. Just last night, we heard that the first programmers in the world were women, and then suddenly we've disappeared from the stage. And then secondly, to congratulate the board and for launching the Digital Foundation of Namibia. I think it's timely. It's really timely. And as Parcom, we can only be excited to be associated with such a platform because it's driving digital inclusion. And when you talk digital, you speak infrastructure. There's no connectivity that hasn't begun with a back end or what we call passive infrastructure. So what we do at Powercom in ensuring that Namibia is connected and that Namibia have access to broadband and internet is to build new infrastructure. And by that, we mean telecommunication towers. But as you know, Namibia is a very vast geography. The landscape and the terrain is quite harsh. So there are also other technology that are working in congruence with network tower like satellites. You also have fiber, you have wax that are all complementing the access to internet. But what I would focus on, I will be unpacking the issue of passive infrastructure, the telecommunication towers, to which we are mandated to deliver. We are indirectly a government entity. We are owned by Telecom Namibia 100%, which is owned by the government. So essentially we exist to deliver government objective, especially now with the launch of the Hamlarambe Prosperity Plan 2, where there's a dedicated goal for, which is geared towards accelerating ICT connectivity. Now, as Parcom, we host about 300 towers countrywide. And then we also have partnership. I like what Her Excellency Ambassador was saying in terms of connectivity partners. We are also in partnership with other, what we call vertical partners, people with elevated structures or higher buildings where the operators that we're servicing are able to put up antenna that then enable to emit signals on your phone, be it for data or voice services. So the infrastructure landscape is very vast and is very diverse. On top of that, we are also in other connectivity partners like Namwater, because they also have quite robust infrastructure where we can also connect Namibia. So a lot of our operators that we are servicing are also onboarding water towers, especially the concrete one, so that they're also able to put up the antennas where there's no towers. Now, today I read an article that was very interesting around students complaining about access to internet at the place where we actually have infrastructure. Now, why I'm raising that is because very often when you see a tower, you think you have arrived, you're connected. But then there is what we call active infrastructure, which is then essentially what interface with you as an end user. Now, very often we would put up the infrastructure and the onus is now on the operators to ensure that they deliver the service to you. Now, this is where the access issue comes into play, because maybe the tower is there, we have invested, but now there is only 2G. And here you are with your smartphone wanting to access your WhatsApp, wanting to download. So the gap in the market as we speak is not only on unserviced area and underserviced area where there's there are dark spots anyway, there's no infrastructure at all, but it's also on the quality of the equipments that are on this infrastructure. So the tower alone is not enough, because I think these students that at the new dam, they actually said, oh, but there is actually, it's a tower issue. But a tower it can only fully function with very robust, what we call base stations equipment on that can transmit really higher quality signals. Now, we've seen that in terms of 3G usage, Africa itself, in terms of access, is at 70%, but the usage itself is only at 23%. So that reality is not too far from Namibia. And that simply means that we now need to ensure that as we put up infrastructure, we actually create value, and that people can really derive the benefits as opposed to just ticking the box and saying, here is a tower, we're done. So as Powercom, we are very involved with our customers. We see it as a partnership rather than just a commercial transaction to say MTC Telecom, our shareholder, apparatus, MTN, here is a tower, but saying we actually monitor in terms of the trends, in terms of the user behaviors, in terms of the satisfaction of quality of service that is on the end, but that's where CRAN also comes into play. But we monitor constantly to make sure that our infrastructure are creating value beyond simply existence. I think I end here for now.
I think that's fair for now. Of course, there are quite a number of other follow-up questions on that, because as we know that a lot of the access issues, of course, rest also on having the right infrastructure in place. Doc, from your perspective, how does your work intersect with access to the internet?
Thank you. I would like to bring up this thing in 3 points. The first thing is to probably just give a short definition of internet access, which is mainly the ability of either an individual or an organization or a community to connect to the internet by either making use of any electronic device, of which it can be a mobile phone, a PC, or whatever. And it is these abilities of an individual that is an individual or organization that is likely to be affected at the end of the day, because like what she was talking about, the tower can be there, and this individual is having a mobile phone. Unfortunately, also there is no maybe electricity in the nearby cooker shops or neighborhood, so the person's mobile phone will be off. And because of that, then they will not be able to access the internet. That's one. Another thing can happen in the case that, you have both the electricity, you have the network tower, you have now the mobile phone or a PC, but the person himself or herself is not digitally, literate or empowered to know how to, effectively utilize, that access that he or she is having. So now that's where we are coming in. And in my case, my work now is one, to do proper research on how effectively, the users, the end users are, making use of these available, devices or accesses. Because access should not only be looked at from the infrastructure point of view, but we should also look at changing the people's mindset on how to utilize, whatever that they are going to have access to. So that's one thing that I'm doing. Another, intersection point is that, since I'm an educator, I teach students that are residing in different areas of the country. And with the online learning, you can see that now we are expected to ensure that, all our students are attending our classes at a specific time slot. Now, these students are located in different locations, different villages. Some of them, they will tell you, I cannot log in to join the class because, my network frequency is poor, or probably, my battery is flat. So I can only attend for the first 5 minutes, and from there my battery will be off. Or they will tell you, tomorrow I will be at an area where there is no network, because we still have some areas where a person will not have, a network connectivity or coverage. So now with these, again, I do intersect with this access issue because people are complaining about it. And lastly, as a digital ethnographer, I am always available online on various social media platforms. And I look at, those few that usually have access to these platforms by using various devices wherever they are. Now at least they have an advantage of accessing these facilities. But what are they discussing there? Are they using these platforms for their own benefit so that it can build them? Are they using it morally? Are they using it responsibly? Then I usually, try by all means to educate these individuals in one way or the other, though they will shout back at you, or I'll try now to inform my students through the specific subjects that I'm teaching, because I'm teaching media and technology in education at the university where I am affiliated to. I think for now, let me just end there.
Ms. Foster, I think one of the biggest mandates, I think a lot of the questions will also be coming your way this afternoon, but just the intersection of the work that you do at CRINE with the access to the internet.
So thank you very much. CRINE is the communications regulator in Namibia, and we are responsible for licensing and regulating all telecommunications and broadcasting and postal licensees. We are also responsible for the Universal Access Fund and to ensure that that fund is utilized in the correct way. Also providing affordable access to all. So we are responsible for regulating prices and quality of service in the industry. So all the things that Alicia has mentioned, CRINE overall oversees that whole process. CRINE is also the biggest data collector for ICT in the country currently. And we also provide a lot of this data, making it available for others and the research community to use. So in a nutshell, this is what CRINE is doing and our importance in this. Thank you so much.
I think when we talk about access to internet, I think there's a very interesting thing that was also raised around infrastructure, not necessarily just the towers themselves, but supporting infrastructure to make sure that there is access to internet. For example, a World Bank report at the end of last year was pointing out that whereas about 82% of the developed world were immediately able to switch over in as far as service provisions due to COVID and make most of those digital, only about 40% of sub-Saharan Africa was able to do that because of a lack of electricity, for example, in a lot of rural areas. And I would just like the comrade Edie and perhaps Ms. Amopolo to also just reflect on that aspect of infrastructure. Where do we stand as a country in as far as access is concerned with rural electrification and so on, to be able to do the foundational platforms before we even move on to creating towers and other infrastructure that will support access to the internet?
I think the zeal is there, but it's a zeal that lacks resources in that, as I have alluded to earlier, internet and connectivity are recent realities in the Namibian mind at whatever level. When you address these issues at levels like legislation, legislatures, the level is challenged, the appreciation thereof, and that's why perhaps student parliaments or parliaments of the young will become ideal for a growing nation such as ours to really speak to modern and current issues. We are more, our drive is more on on yester issues, but not on current and future issues. And that's why you will see that the resource constraint continues unabated year in, year out because of lack of that appreciation. The ministry was created, for instance, in 2008 with a grand aspiration by former President Pohamba. But what has gone into driving that great dream? If it was a political program, I'm sure we would have seen a different aspect altogether. If it was a program of mobilizing Namibians to keep us in the driving seat, I'm sure resources would have been pumped into this. into this sector, but we don't realize that. And that's why I was saying, I'm not being critical, but I would like to share the reality that we deal with on a daily basis, the constraints that we face on a daily basis. Of course, we have our players like Powercom and other state entities that are grappling with the bull on the horns, but there is always an end to something. There is a limit to which they can do. So that is the challenge. Awareness is therefore, it's very, very important. It must go hand in hand, like promoting adult literacy. Digital literacy is crucial. Internet literacy is crucial, particularly on the adult level, so that the society can appreciate the advantages and the values associated with the internet.
So you say basically that there needs to be that synergies must be created
Yes,
now across
yes.
Different agencies within government to know that
Definitely.
this is how we can deliver on your mandate,
Definitely.
but in a newer way.
Definitely. This is important because the periphery has this wealth that is untapped. We have people that are tilling the land. We have people that are livestock farmers. They sit with these resources. But knowing how to channel the use and profits of these resources will only be ignited by that literacy and awareness.
Sao Paulo?
I totally agree with Comrade Ide. And maybe to your point regarding how COVID has really sort of placed demand on infrastructure and sort of, in a way, accelerated digitization. Suddenly we were all working from home. Suddenly we were learning online. And that was quite a rude awakening for us who are on the back end of the value chain, to say that we just realized how access was really a challenge, so much so that we had to radically design a dedicated project as Powercom to build 500 towers as into yesterday.
Sure.
It keeps us awake when you hear the doctor next to me saying that, you know, his students are not able to log in because they simply don't have access. But indeed, as Ed is saying, there are enormous challenges to roll out infrastructure in underserviced area very rapidly. And there is indeed a dependency on other core infrastructure. You've alluded to energy, but for us, the major dependency is land. Now, without land, you do not have a tower. And then once you have secured land, you again need to go through the environmental clearance. And from there, you might have to do, depending on the terrain, you might have to do a geotechnical analysis from the coastal side because of the water levels. And all the way, you then go on to public comments and consultation. So the process is very laborious and very painful. Now, it is very challenging when you find a respective town council taking 2 years to approve land for a new tower where the residents tend to benefit, or when environmental clearance takes over 6 months. So we would definitely need a multi-stakeholder approach to be able to arrest this challenge. Initially, we were caught up into, well, you know, we are a communication enabler, until we realized that there's actually a civil sort of engineering on the back end to get the tower up. And this is really where the bottlenecks lies for us. Now, going forward, this is our strategy. We are going to launch an RFP, or what we call a request for proposals, in partnership with our shareholder Telecom Namibia, to call anybody, all the players out there, to come with proposal on how best to accelerate these 500 towers, both from technical and financial perspective, because the resources that Comrade Edi alluded to are a reality, but we also know that there is a lot of funding available from a pension fund, from private equity firm, from asset managers that are really hungry to invest in the economy. And at Powercom, we realize that we can no longer invest at the pace to which we can afford, because Namibia is really in urgent need of infrastructure, it's in earnest need of access to internet. And I think the pandemic is going to outlive, this era and it's going to be here for quite a long time. The new normal has been necessitated. People are going to continue to work from home in the next years to come. So there is no longer room to delay. That's one. The second one, we are going to disrupt the legislative and regulatory process in as far as land acquisition is concerned in the country. We realize that the town councils are very willing. When you engage them, traditional authorities are on board, but this legislative process and regulatory process is very cumbersome. So it needs to be reviewed. And that's going to be one of our strategic initiatives to ensure that this bottleneck is eliminated. The third one has to do with existing infrastructure, which is sharing. We do know that Namibia has a history of duplication of infrastructure, especially among government-owned entities. We operate in a group of company, NPTH group of company, as a subsidiary of a subsidiary. In that group, you also have MTC. Now, of late, we've realized that we need to work together. And we have sort of agreed to work towards an integrated plan where we actually sit around the table and map out where the demand is and who is going south and who is going west to avoid building next to each other. So that for us is a very progressive move, and we're working very well together to ensure that there are no duplicated infrastructure, because for those who live in Windhoek, for example, you could see at Eros Mountain, there are 3 towers next to each other. So our model is to share. We build 1 tower, it hosts four operators or even more. So you can have MTN there, Paratus on, Telecom on, MTC on, and whatever your service provider is, you are able to get internet access from there.
Well, Mr. Lake said, Ms. Forsley, I think on the issue around the legal framework, we know that there's quite a number of policies and proposed bills that are on the table right now. We know, of course, with access to information, it creates unique issues, personal data protection, cybersecurity, etc. Could we look at the fact that they are still in the production phase, for lack of a better word, as a potential impediment towards access to information? Either one of you can go first.
Should I go first? Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, what Ms. Mbopolo and Mr. Ujarakana was saying, you know, it isn't the one thing that where we are facing challenges. So we're facing infrastructure challenges, we're facing sort of rule-making challenges, we're having to deal with, as the executive director pointed out, with legislation and regulation that has outlived usefulness, that needs to be updated. Our processes are set up to not be sort of what is required at this stage. I mean, we're talking, there's a lot of talk around 4th industrial revolution and that sort of thing, and smart regulations, smart processes, smart infrastructure, all these sorts of things. And our processes, I mean, from what we're hearing here, and what we can take away from here and what we know, are not smart. They're not the 21st century processes, irrespective of which sector you decide to look at in the space that we're talking about. So really there needs to be a move towards, and I think, I mean, as a small country with sort of a centralized governance environment, you know, everything is happening out of Windhoek. To bring together, you know, sort of the processes and the systems, even if we're going to, the aim is to decentralize at some point, but to bring together at this point, you know, these processes and really transform them into smart processes that speak to the moment, that speak to, you know, COVID-19 is a moment, you know, that should really be providing us with impetus to make a leap forward. As, you know, sort of, this is sort of the narrative that is out there, not just, you know, Namibia or Southern Africa or the continent, but globally. We need to seize this moment to make a leap forward in terms of technology is the future. When we are faced with crisis situations, such as what we are faced with in the COVID era, then technology can make and continue to make things work and go forward and so forth. So we really need to be in a position, regulatory-wise, infrastructure-wise, and so forth, to be able to capitalize, to be able to continue, that our society doesn't come to a stop. Now, I share in home office with my wife, and just to add to what Dr. Shiomeko was saying, and she is teaching, sort of her class. She's a lecturer at NUST, and she constantly has to field these sorts of things that you're talking about students aren't able to connect. Now, it's not just that there's an infrastructure problem. We have to talk about the cost problem as well. Namibia is a very expensive, when it comes to data costs, Namibia is right up there on the continent.
So we can say it's restrictively expensive.
It is for a lot of people. In civil society, we're having to deal with, with communities, and a lot of the communities, the constituency that we work with is the youth. And especially for the youth, which is also the constituency with the highest unemployment, and really a lack of financial resources. This is a constituency that is looking to be digitally savvy. But if we look at sort of where our young people are, they cannot make use of all of the applications that are available online, because a lot of these applications are data intensive. And so they only have, they have to budget their data. So they cannot make use of, for instance, applications that could actually be economically beneficial to them, because they have to conserve their data, because they don't have the money, they don't have the livelihoods to be able to afford, a steady quality internet connection. I pay $1,000 for my internet connection, which is, if I think about people out there who aren't in a position like me to be able to pay $1,000 per month debit order for my internet connection, a quality, well, that's a debatable thing. Quality internet in this country is debatable. But anyway, so most people aren't in the position to be able to pay $1,000 per month for a stable connection, which is really good quality at certain points during the day. And those are the things, in terms of education, I think there was recently an article I saw which stated that almost 50% of our schools still don't have electricity, which is problematic. We can't start talking about internet and the like if we haven't even sorted out the basic infrastructure issues that should give us that platform on which we go into this fourth industrial revolution.
Ms. Vosloo, I think there are quite a number of items that are landing on the desk, particularly the issue around the restrictive cost of data that remains an impediment to access to internet.
Yes, thank you very much. I agree so much with you. I quickly looked at the stats before I came to this meeting this afternoon. And if we just look at SADC has 15 countries. We are the 11th most expensive in terms of data, especially for your smaller user, your 300 megabyte user. Those are the guys in the rural areas, the poor guys, the guys who are unemployed, that has access, and then it is the most expensive in the country. If you look at huge packages like 20 gigabyte, we are second in the region. So it seems that there's a little bit of a discriminatory process against our poor, and we understand it because it is about economies of scale. But I think there is a need for a collective drive, especially from government side as well, to say, how are we assisting our rural populations, our poor populations, to allow them to have access at affordable pricing? And it starts down with the whole value chain. Alicia has mentioned the issue of infrastructure sharing. But it's more than passive infrastructure sharing. It is more than just sharing the tower. It is about sharing the equipment, allowing other operators that do not have the capital to actually share that equipment, because it's a benefit to both, and in the end, it's a benefit to the end consumer. If ABC can share the tower with Telecom Namibia, whose active radio equipment is on there, it means they assist in paying that active equipment, which should bring prices down for everyone. Because now you don't need to have all that capital cost on yourself. You as operator don't need to pay it down for yourself. You can share it with someone else. And in the end, the whole economy benefits from that. We're talking about telecommunications and electricity as enablers, in economic enablers. So if you build a tower here today, or you put an electricity point here today, tomorrow there will be a cooker shop, and 3 months later there will be a whole village, because suddenly they have access. To me, the COVID pandemic has showed us that there is a serious need to look at the way that we conduct telecommunications business in this country. And here I'm starting from the operators to the end consumer. We are looking at government, banks. There was a decision taking that no more checks. But there's this old gogo sitting in a village, and she doesn't have access. So now she has to go and collect her pension. She has to take a taxi or get a lift and pay someone to take her to the distribution point so that she can collect her pension. Then she walks with the cash, which can actually is a risk for her. Then she buys her thingies, and then she has to go back to the village. That is a very costly thing. If she had access, she could have used a mobile app. And government could have paid over her money into an account, and she could have used the app to do her payments. But she can't, because she doesn't have 3G access. 3G access have actually increased tremendously. It's currently at 78%. But to me, that means that 22% of the population still don't have access. We are making decisions separately from each other, and thereby the population as a whole is not benefiting from the decisions that we are making. And I think it's time for operators to come together and say, how can we better serve the consumer? Because after all, if we think about it, the consumer is paying us. And that is to the benefit of the whole economy. Not, I want to make more than ABC, and XYG wants to make more than this, and I want to try and keep you out of the market, and therefore I'm doing everything in my power to be anti-competitive because I want to keep all the money for myself. And I think that is where we should start. Thank you. I'm ranting a little bit, sorry.
That's good, that's good, that's good. that's why we brought you together here.
It's time we talk of process re-engineering with regard to legislative processing, because it takes too long. There are so many substructures in realizing the bill coming before realizing the bill come to Parliament. This cabinet committee, this stakeholder consultation, there are no limits, there are no parameters that are set for you to say, I have satisfied the need to consult and I need to move on. Anybody can wake up any time and say, I was not consulted. Yet other stakeholders will have made tremendous contribution to realizing that. The other thing is that when we talk of basic food items, I'm sure for more than 10 years now, we have been hearing of the basic income grant. Maybe it's high time we speak of basic income grant and finding a formula how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that as well. I think
Ricardo, I mean, I just want to just also add on there. I mean, I don't know what you saw on the internet during COVID, but what I saw, for instance, on Twitter, I'm a Twitter user. And I mean, what I saw on Twitter over the last year was a lot of young people coming on the platform with business, selling perfumes, trying to drum up business. Sort of a cottage industry started developing. People were starting to use these platforms to create their own livelihoods. Now, this is the sort of thing that we want. Now, I mean, part of our talking points here was, how the registration of websites is sort of stagnated in Namibia. But I think what happened was, I mean, our economy is not in a good state. We all know that resources are constrained, government, private sector, and so forth. And people are really innovating and trying to make social media work for them as a platform to drum up business. Now, a lot of these businesses, you saw them in spurts, sort of marketing themselves, whether it's delivering meals or selling soap or the like, or fashion. There was quite a lot of young women selling fashion items, their own creations and the like. And there was this moment, and it probably still is there, where there actually is economic opportunity and the unlocking of innovation and entrepreneurship because of what's happening. And we're not capitalizing on these things. A lot of these people have sort of gone quiet, which sort of suggests that these businesses haven't been able to sustain what they were doing on the social media platforms. And there was an opportunity where we could have helped these businesses. And we're talking about unemployment in this country. We want to do something about unemployment. We want to help the youth create their own businesses and livelihoods. And we're sort of missing these opportunities when they present themselves. And this is what was happening over the last year or so. And I think opportunities like these are where we really need not just government. We need some sort of flexible private sector intervention as well that can assist, young people or entrepreneurs in general to make use of these opportunities to develop their businesses. So this was what was happening. I think we lost economic opportunities during COVID-19. A lot of businesses closed, but there were a lot of opportunities that also were created for a lot of people. And we really should be in a position, and that's what I mean with smart processes, where we really capture these, when these things emerge, that we capture them and capitalize on them and make sure that they grow into full businesses and so forth.
I think perhaps one of those conversations that we need to also look at going forward is we see even with financing right now, a lot of capital is being made available, but it's more for traditional businesses. Even if you say agriculture, I'm not going to go get a loan right now that supports hydroponics, for example, that looks at a more technological advanced way of growing crops and so on. So like the ED was saying a little bit earlier on, that process re-engineering, perhaps not only for government, but I think cross-sector, private and public, in terms of seeing where are we going and how do we make sure that those resources that are also available are able to meet how society is responding to that. One of the questions I really wanted to also put on the table, Ms. Vosloo, is the cost of handsets, especially smartphones that are said to be very high in Namibia. We know that, of course, not everybody can afford a laptop, but now using WhatsApp, for example, tertiary education institution students are able to access their assignments and resources and so on. Can you share with us some regulatory provisions with regards to the pricing of handsets in the country, and also reflect on how this can help with the issue around digital inclusion?
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, CRAN does not regulate those prices, but we all realize that the pricing of handsets is one of the factors that is holding back access to everyone. Handsets for smartphones are very expensive, but once again, we can come together with other operators. Ministry of Finance can, for example, say, if you are a student, we will waive taxes and you will not pay the 15% tax. We will waive import taxes on certain mobile devices to make them more accessible to students or to people who do not have the means to buy a $16,000 or $26,000 Apple iPhone. I mean, we all want the nice things, but let us be honest, we cannot all afford it. Even I can't afford a $26,000 iPhone. And I would actually be fine with a $1,000 smartphone because I just WhatsApp and call. I don't use it. And of course, I'm from the older generation, so I'm on Facebook. But, and I want to add to what you were saying there, that you see all these groups that are forming to assist our farmers, to assist our small community people trying to make a living and trying to get an income. Advertisings, and there's a drive in Namibia, support Namibians, help them to make this. But if I am there in Timbuktu where I don't have access, I don't know about the farmer that is 3 farms away from me and that is selling something that I really need. So I think, yes, we have developed a demand-side model for the Universal Access Program. And this is built, what we've done is we have mapped everything in the country, every school, every clinic, every post office, every police station, all the fiber, all the towers, if it's 3G, 2G, 4G, and we can see exactly where everyone is that do not have access, and we're currently in the process of sharing this with the operators because it will assist them in their planning to see, yes, there's electricity, there's 3,000 people that do not have access, let us go and build our tower there. And we are working with them on this. But what we can see is a lot of schools actually have access, but they don't have physical access. The tower is there, but the money is not there to pay the monthly $1,000 so that the students can have access and utilize the internet. So I think there, and I'm going to say again what I said earlier, there is a need for us as country, as institutions, as government to come together and address the problems and find a way forward. I think COVID and the educational system has caught us with our pants on our knees because suddenly students were not able to learn. And what will happen with them in a year? Because they've missed a year. And I think that just showed us the importance of having affordable handsets, having affordable access to these services everywhere in the country. Not only in Windhoek and Swakop and Walvis Bay and Oshakati, because that is where the operators are making lots and lots of money, but also there in those small little villages where there are only 50 or 60 people living. And that is what we should work to.
Well,
yeah.
Doctor?
Yeah, I just want to add to this that there is a greater need for higher education institutions also to come in, especially those ones that offers, these lifelong learning education programs to assist, both, the PARCOM, CRAN. So whenever they are coming up with these, infrastructures for internet access, then at least the educational institutions will have, an educational, program to educate, sensitize, and, empower, the possible users of these specific facilities. And I think this is what I am not seeing, lately, that education institutions are not coming forth to also assist these, organizations that are coming up with these infrastructures. I was also looking at, this, that, CRAN has got data, and most of our researchers need to go to CRAN, get the data and analyze them. When she was talking about statistics here, I was thinking like, okay, if you go deeper in the data that she's referring to, and you look at now, who are those people that are accessing these, services? Mainly, they are in town. If they are at the villages, again, if you go there, they are coming from the most well-off, households. So still there is digital exclusion indirectly. And also, if you look at it now, the age category, you can see that mostly it's those who middle-aged, and they have, they went to education here and there. Another thing is that, if you check the data nicely, the digital excluded population, they hardly access these, internet services. And when I'm talking about digital excluded populations, I'm now referring to those ones who are older than, 51 years and above. Yeah, they are not mainly on these platforms. Culture plays a role. They say, why should I be on this? Well, it is not secure, the issue of trust and all those things. But if we go deeper there, down at the villages, and we sensitize our individuals, the societies, the citizens, and I think this is where the Digital Foundation of Namibia is coming in, then they will be able to make use of whatever that is available, that specific time. One example that I wanted to give here, when they were also talking about this, even the e-banking services, we have seen a lot of cases whereby, citizens, they get robbed at the ATM. Somebody will send them, e-wallet or blue wallet or easy wallet, and this person cannot read and write. At least she or he is having a mobile phone. They will go to a nearby, town. Then they will ask a security guard, "May you please help me out now to withdraw my money?" Then by the time, just in the process, within 2 seconds, then the security guard will say, "No, there's no money here." Whatever happened, you don't know, but by the time this person will check, will go to another person, the money is no longer there, it's withdrawn. Now these people I'm always, asking the banking sector, like now, do you really do proper education, with your clients or customers when you are implementing some of these things? Luckily, I am still doing research with, looking at, people's, how do they access, how do they make use of these, services at ATMs, especially those ones who are not educated. But, it is a long process. But I would like us now to come together as institutions of higher learning. We should also come in, analyze the data, develop an education program to assist these, operators also, so that at least now our citizens will have access to these services the way it was supposed to be.
I'd just like to, of course, remind our followers online that we, of course, also have space and room for questions from you as well. I'll also open the floor up for questions after this last one, because, of course, we've created the platform so that you can be able to engage with this distinguished panel here as well. I think I will be failing in my job if I don't bring on the issue around e-commerce and e-finance. I think e-finances, I don't even want to go there with fintech, but the umbrella concept around e-commerce, you've seen, e-wallets and a number of other items fall within that space. When Mr. Links was talking a little bit earlier about, there was a huge opportunity last year with a lot of small businesses that started, that were selling stuff from home. One of the challenges was also having a proper platform for this e-commerce, where you can even just online place your order and have somebody come and deliver it. So it's the delivery service and, of course, the payment gateway for that person that's selling from their household. The issue around e-commerce, we rank around 45 to 50% respectively. We'll need a little bit more data there. But Alyssa, I would really want you to step in here and just talk to us a little bit about e-commerce and access to internet and how important that is for us going forward as a country.
Thank you, Ricardo. You kind of read my mind, because I was actually going to interject to say that bridging the digital divide, ultimate goal is to enable the fourth industrial revolution. And I think when you unpack the fourth industrial revolution, you are really talking about digital lifestyles. And we're not only talking about it from a residential individual point of view, but also from a corporate behavior point of view. Now, during the pandemic, we've seen that because people couldn't socialize, people turned to internet to facilitate their lives. So they were buying online, and we've seen the evolutions of Pick and Pay store online, for example, which really grew during the pandemic. We've seen that people have turned to digital entertainment, and suddenly platforms like TikTok were trending. I'm sure all of us have seen some very humorous TikTok videos. Now, those things make us very happy in the industry, because it means there's demand, there's usage, and there's growth in the industry itself, and that creates economic opportunities. But what we are not seeing adequately is Namibian products trading online. as a unique country. I mean, our GDP is really driven by tourism, fisheries, logistics. Imagine having to facilitate products like tourism product online. We have very beautiful weavers in this country, where you can actually put up the Namibian basket and they can find their way to UK online. So really sort of monetizing the digital platform to be able to trade, that is not taking off very well. We know international markets are paying premiums. And that is something for our women who are in the village, either making marula oil, but don't have access to market, simply because there is no platform to sell. And we then cry about the shelf. You know, we really need to get Namibian products on the shelf, but we should be saying we need to get Namibian products online. So there are opportunities that would really stimulate demands, because for our operators, our customers, they actually depend on connecting the end users. That's how they generate revenue. That's how they create value. So in terms of digital content creation also, a lot of popular digital sort of personalities, very few are from Namibia. Now, Namibia is very endowed with robust infrastructure, in as much as we have gaps. Just onto the point to say, a lot of people who are in urban area are optimally connected. But are we seeing opportunities emerging out of there for Namibian digital content creators that have a pan-African or global impact? There is that opportunity, at least for those who can afford. For those who cannot afford, that's where the Universal Service Fund aspect comes into play. And I think it was raised to say that if you're a tech startup, a digital startup who want to maybe design an e-commerce platform, there isn't enough investment in that. There isn't enough angel investors. And personally, I'd like to see the Universal Service Fund moving away from the typical tradition of, Alyssa, I know you don't want to build a tower in Okamatapati because it's not commercially viable for you. Here is a fund for you to go and do it, bid for it. To saying that we need X number of tech entrepreneurs that are looking at launching products for end user market. Here is the seed capital, because a lot of them are students, a lot of them are fresh graduates with no collaterals and no credit history. And there's not enough avenues for them to really be creative and fail at it and try again and launch something to go to market. The future is e-commerce. I personally studied and worked in the UK. I was used to shopping online. I was used to paying my electricity online. So I became very disabled when I came back, because I don't know how to go in a bank anymore. I don't know how to do anything manually anymore. And I think that is essentially what necessitated me to launch the platform like information.na, because I was just getting tired of calling somebody, do you know a plumber? Do you know somebody who can fix this? Everything could literally be at fingertips. So there is an opportunity.
There's an opportunity. Before we allow Federico to give that interjection, I just have a question also that I just want to put on the floor from Zoom, and then we can continue. It says here, my question goes to Ms. Forslu, and you can think about it so long before you answer. Can that information also be made available to public, as it will benefit other businesses in the ICT space? I think it might refer to some statistics that you were sharing a little bit earlier on as well. Mr. Links?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to also say something about the e-commerce. You know, once again, I mean, the moment that COVID-19 presented us with was, you know, this e-procurement moment. Now, I mean, the Namibian government is the biggest entity player force in the Namibian economy. And, you know, a lot of businesses rely on public procurement contracts. But I mean, the Ministry of Finance assessment of e-procurement readiness for Namibia you know, from 2019 found that we will only be optimally, the state will only be optimally ready for e-procurement at some point after 2030. Because of the capacity challenges within the various levels of government, from central government down to your local authorities, your village councils and the like. So it was a whole of system sort of assessment, and found that, you know, for e-procurement to work optimally, that would only be at some point after 2030. Now, COVID-19 should have been the moment where we say, we can't wait until some point after 2030. We really need to find a way to speed up processes, because what we saw last year was Central Procurement Board closed its doors because of the regulations. Procurement processes are suspended. We moved to a system of direct procurement, emergency procurement. We have a lot of suspicious things that we have in our work have highlighted out of what happened under the emergency procurement in some instances, which is things that we don't want to see. I mean, we're all aware of the sort of emergency procurement corruption that happened in South Africa. The astronomical amounts of money that were wasted, that were lost. And we saw the same sort of things, the red flags of similar sort of conduct here in Namibia. So what we really don't want to do is suspend our procurement processes. What we want them to do is to be anticipatory of such crises happening, and then to revert to a way of doing business that doesn't disrupt our economy. And a lot of businesses went out of business in this period, in this COVID period. I know of some in my personal circle, in my family, and so on. People who've lost businesses. People who are doing business with government, and this is really. This should really be the moment where we also say, in terms of e-procurement, look, we need to find a way to speed up processes, to speed up being ready when such crises emerge. And this speaks to the larger e-government ambitions of government, where people get their documents without having to go and queue, without social distancing, at the Ministry of Home Affairs. You know, and possibly becoming infected, where people can access government services remotely, and really that should be the aim at this stage.
And I think quite an interesting thing also with regards to that is it brings about another question, where in other developed countries they were saying, in terms of transforming to e-governance, there was also the question of jobs. So the moment I put on a very, very effective e-governance system or platform, even in one of the ministries, there's always a question of how many of the clerks do we let go and how many do we keep? But that one is just for thinking. Just keep it at the back of your mind. We had a question there from the floor. Then 2 questions from the floor, 3 here with Yvette. So we can take those, and then we'll see if there's any question online before we close the session for today. Just your name and organization. So that they can hear the question.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Opemi. You can call me Tangi. I'm from the Media and Information Literacy Learning Initiative organization, which is Mili Namibia. I'm a trainer and facilitator. I'm also a final year student at the College of the Arts. I want to start with a story of someone that was documented in one of my training in Katima. Her name is Evelyn. And Evelyn is a 21-year-old girl. She graduated last year from Caprivi Senior Secondary School. And unfortunately, she's still seated at home in the village right now, just because when she needed to apply for UNAM, it was online and she didn't have a smartphone. She couldn't connect to the internet because she lived in a village, and for you to get access to the internet, or for you to get to UNAM, or for you to get to the resource center, it's a 60-kilometer drive to town. And she couldn't access, and by the time she eventually got assistance, it's those villages where you need this one person that had a baki and have to take almost everybody when you are going for shopping. I took my time to interview her, and it was very emotional for me. And by the time she could eventually get someone that could take her to town where she could register, application was closed. An application was only online, and it was too late for her. Unfortunately, she's still seated at home now. So it brings to mind my first question, which is about data cost. And I was looking at the same statistic online right now, and it showed that in Africa, Namibia ranked 15th. This is according to Statista.com, and in terms of data cost, and averagely in US dollars, it's 4.78 US dollars for you to buy 1 gigabyte of data in Namibia. And the cheapest in Africa is between Ghana, Tanzania, Algeria, Sudan, Somalia, which is between 0.5 cents to 0.94 cents to buy 1 gigabyte. And I still want to put it to Kran that is there still nothing we can do to still bring down the cost of data in Namibia from where it is right now? Because it's a serious concern. And my second question is about the regulation around some of these programs we have from our data production centers, or what do you call it, our service providers, in terms of something they call TAMBA. And I see that perhaps because data is expensive, there is a certain way that our service providers are trying to privatize this sort of giving us something you are borrowing up to $150 of credit, when literally you can even have cheaper data, because at the end of the day, they see the desperation of people to have data right now than before, when all classes are online, all applications are online. So is there still nothing CRAN can do? Then I have a question to the ministry, and it's in two parts. The first part is around media and information literacy learning trainings and digital literacy trainings. I really have a strong worry, especially to the rural communities. Yes, MICT provides computers and libraries and things like that in the different towns and regions, but how much do we work together with organizations like Millie? It's unfortunate that the director of Millie just stepped out. I don't know if she's gone. And as well as I know MICT works with ISOC, but then trainings of media and information literacy and digital literacy is very key. I'm so excited about this. And I think it's a charge to the institutions, UNAM and NOST, and as well MICT seriously to take this up, that if we are having this, if we are saying we are diverting people to the online community, we need to make it a priority that we include literacy trainings, especially for people within the rural community, to avoid disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, to also empower people to be digital citizens. Right now, we only have electronic citizens for those that have electronics, especially the young generation, but not having digital literacy. So how much are we doing on that side? As well as the communities of persons with disability. I can't find any of them in this room or any representative from there in this room, but they are also the people that are also important in this space, because they also engage in this space. The hearing impaired, the visually impaired. Do they have enough electronic access as well? Because in their cases, there are certain electronic assets they need. Do they have it? Do they have access to it? Are they also engaged as us? How much are we doing as a ministry and as private entities? How much are we doing to have these people on board? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think next time I put you on the panel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. He seems to have it.
Good. My name is Alphonse. I'm a master student from NAST and from Kone region. When you're speaking about the terrain, you speak about the Kone region. It's most of the region are not covered, as we say. Now, I pose my question from the minister also. Maybe you think of something like a community hub? Do you have some ideas in that area? So, because I was in that region a week ago, where we're doing research, and one of the key things is that people are trying to use technology, but because of connection issues, I think community hub can be one of the solutions that you can be used. And we have some institution or company that are trying to put up, maybe you can have a partnership or be able to fund, if there's anyone has come up with an idea of building a community hub in certain area that can be able to help the community in that area. And then my second question go to UNAM, the doctor from UNAM. I have found some of my friends from UNAM who are using their pocket Wi-Fi, which is very slow, and people are missing classes using that thing, especially even in Windhoek. And I have two of them who went to Oppo recently because they cannot afford to being here and also afford the issue of data. But I heard UNAM still online. So how come UNAM still online while people are not having access to what they are providing until when UNAM still being online? That's my two questions.
Thank you, sir. I think let's start with some of the responses. Okay, let's take that one last question and then we can do the responses.
All right, I'm really feeling cold. But then thank you so much. My name is Ndapanda Nekongo. I'm a media facilitator. I'm also a media freelancer. So my question goes to the ICT, the ministry. There is a website that people look for job. And then that website is currently on. I find myself in a situation where some of my colleagues, because I'm staying in Windhoek, they are staying in different villages. They want to get access to that website for looking for job. Their website, sometimes it's not going through, or sometimes they failed to register. My question is, how accessible is the website can able to access people that are even in remote areas? Because it's really hard in terms of looking for a job. And then young people, they are everywhere hunting for a job. My other question is going to the thing, Kran. The issue of internet access. We have TN Mobile. We have students that are studying in Windhoek, students that are studying elsewhere. They have TN Mobile data, but you find yourself in a situation, or myself sometimes if I travel out of Windhoek and go to other towns, I'm using my Wi-Fi portable. You find yourself where the Wi-Fi isn't accessible or the network is failing. And then this is a reason why unpacking the internet access in Namibia. Where do we stand now with these issues?
Thank you very much. Fair questions. And I think one of the things that we might have missed is having one of the operators sitting here on the table. But many times they always say it's not their fault if they've got a business to run. Well, let's start with some of the responses for these questions that were asked.
Thank you very much. Community Hub, it's a dream that is hard to come true at the moment. We have 26 multi-purpose community centers, and that means in 26 constituencies out of the 121 constituencies of the country, and that's how too far away to be accomplished. Most of them are in rural areas, where you have all the myriad challenges of connectivity, the challenges of human resources, because they thrive on volunteers, school leavers, or institutions of high institutions of learning graduates who go to the villages in the constituency, and for passing time, they find this facility and want to serve the community, and then there is a call for a job somewhere. Then they are gone. For 6 months, there is no volunteer coming by to assist. The youngsters that have gone out of school and are in those communities to utilize the service that is there. Most of the gadgets end up becoming dysfunctional and taking months to get refixed because they have to be sent to Windhoek, to be fixed, or to Sakati from a place like Okambwachi. So those are the challenges. The zeal, the aspiration is there, but to actualize the aspiration is a challenge. And I think it ties in with what Madam Apostle indicated for us to locate instances of similar minds that are scattered, to bring them together. Say if you have them around Rundu, some are in Dama, some are in Ngurenguru, to mobilize and have a common identity and a common front to address these common challenges and problems. What was the other question?
I think it was the issue around the digital literacy.
There was also the issue on the website. I think I will have to get details of that and acquaint ourselves and find a way to respond meaningfully. regarding that specific website, job seekers. I don't know whether it's under. Yes, that's what I suspected. And that's why I will check with my colleague and see how we channel the responses in that regard.
It's actually quite interesting also on that issue of the Ministry of Labour. They are motivating their budget vote today as we speak. And I saw from that motivation that there is a certain amount of money that is being put aside that they are motivating in Parliament right now to get funds from the Ministry of Finance to improve that service that was introduced. So your question is fair, but it's also being addressed from what I've seen right now, obviously, with the appropriation bill being debated in Parliament today.
I just wanted to say it's a profound finding that we have made, and it calls on us as players in society to identify and locate each other and address the problem collectively. Given the fact that we have skills deficit and competences deficit, and therefore we cannot go in an isolation fashion. We need to tie our strengths together and competences together, and that way we'll be able to serve our communities much stronger and effectively.
Alyssa?
Yes, I wanted to add on to the response of the Comrade Ide to the gentleman from Kunene regarding the reliability of connectivity, and to the lady who alluded to the quality of connectivity. Thank you very much for those questions. I'm actually intrigued by the scenario in Kunene, simply because even though it's sparsely populated and it has the harsh terrain, as you alluded to, it's one of the regions where we're overly invested. In fact, in terms of the proportion of our tower investment, the region with the highest number of towers in our portfolio is Kunene. Now, to the point I made earlier to say that the tower alone is not enough, because you need active infrastructure, and not only active, but reliable in terms of uptime. Now, I've gotten calls like from a regional governor, they're saying, I'm in front of the tower, but I'm not able to connect. What's going on? And you realize that the infrastructure that is on that tower is actually very redundant. It's very outdated infrastructure that can no longer serve the 21st century demands. Now, through those intervention and engagement, we've actually managed to have a lot of our customers roll out and upgrade the infrastructure in Kunene, I think 2 years ago. And as of now, connectivity has improved. But there's still a lot to be done, because very often we have this theory of saying, you know what, I'm going to gradually move from 2G, then 3G, and then eventually to 4G. And as we speak, 5G is on the horizon. It has launched in our neighboring country, South Africa. And soon, it's a matter of time before spectrum has been allocated for 5G. So essentially, we need to really radicalize how we deploy equipment on the infrastructure that then eventually gives you internet services, without necessarily confining ourselves indeed to saying we must gradually move from 2G, and then only when we are at 4G and at 98% do we then launch 5G. So it's a matter of the reliability of the equipment on there, which lies in the hands of our operators. Now, I think that also answers the lady's question to say, but I'm in Oshakati, but I'm just not, I'm having drop calls, or I'm actually getting thrown out while I'm online. Again, it also speaks to the quality of the infrastructure and the service. Sometimes it's congestion. Operators will normally throw that challenge back in our court and say, look, I have now 50,000 traffic originating from that tower. It's congested, the town has grown very rapidly. I need you to put up more new towers. So, and that's what exactly happened in Windhoek. So we are actually, as we speak, building or trying to roll out 9 towers alone in Windhoek, simply because of congestion, because of migration and decentralization not taking off at a faster pace, so people are moving to the city or central urban area, and we need to build more infrastructure. And this is why, as Powercom, we've now undertaken to build 500 towers as into yesterday.
That's a solid response there. I think, Ms. Foster, there was one question to you, and then we'll give it back to the floor for that last question from Vivek before we close off.
very much. I have three questions. The one is on the data prices. CRAN is currently in the process of conducting a data study, and it will be finalized by mid-May. And we will then come up with possible ways to reduce data prices, because it is a concern to CRAN as well. Then there was a question on Zoom about the data availability. Anyone is welcome to ask us for the data. Just specify what data is required, and we will see if we can share it. You're welcome to send an email to economics@cran.na and just specify exactly what you need, and then we will be able to share that information with you. Internet access. The question about, I have this little device, but when I go outside of Windhoek, Alicia, this is very much to do with you as well, and then suddenly I don't have connection anymore. So MTC and Telecom Namibia are our two mobile providers. But if you are on Telecom Namibia's network and they don't have a tower, or they don't have access to a tower, it means that you won't have a connection. And that is why we are propagating very much not only the passive sharing of infrastructure, but also the active sharing of infrastructure. But together with that, CRAN has now been trying since, I think, 2014, I'm not sure, to get number portability going in this country. And we are not able to get that going because of resistance from our operators and all kinds of funny things happening in the market. These are all things that opens up the whole ICT market to competition. Infrastructure sharing, number portability, universal access. These are all economic issues that tries to address the issue of we need more competition in the industry. And CRAN has issued a lot of licenses since we started, but many of those licenses are specified at a niche market. And in the meantime, we are sitting in a situation where the two dominant operators are both belonging to the same shareholder, which makes it very difficult for a new operator to come into the market. And because of a number of reasons, we as consumers are also guilty there. We are lazy as people. I will not go from FNB to Netbank because it is an effort. I will not go from MTC to Telecom Namibia because it's an effort. Nah. I will complain on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram about the very, very bad service. But at the end of the month, I'm still paying my account because I don't want to go to the telecom shop or the MTC mobile home or the Paratus, whatever, and say to them, I am canceling my contract because you provide me with bad service. I'm going to the next operator because it's an effort to do so. So I think that CRAN is trying to do everything in the powers as given to us by the Act to help bring prices down, to help and get the competition going, because your best price negotiator is actually effective competition. But there is no competition between two operators that belongs to the same shareholder. They say there is, but we can see that there is not. And I just want to give a quick example here. In 2013, in 2011, when Leo came on board, and then it became Cell One or something, we were third cheapest mobile operator in Africa because we had private competition. Then Telecom Namibia bought Cell One, and now on mobile, we are 45th in Africa. So the ultimate is we should have proper competition. And if we can't have that, then the regulator has to find ways to step in. And to do that, we need an amendment of our act. And all these are very slow processes, which means that we unfortunately are lagging 10 years behind what is happening in the industry at this moment. Our policies are outdated, our laws are outdated, and the process to get up to date is just too slow. Thank you so much.
Vivek, let's give you a chance quickly for that question.
Just actually as a comment about how tax should be waived for students, I would highly recommend MICT and try and look at how they can influence regulatory or educational institutions to look at Pebble. Pebble is the first computer built in Africa. It is a local, there's no tax to be paid. It's as cheap as 3,000 up to 7,000. So that's just a quick FYI. My question is probably a split three-way. You spoke about 500 extra towers. Fantastic, great. You want to bring private sector in to help with that. Fantastic, great. So now my question is, if a private regulator is going to have towers that are going to, I as a personal user am connecting through, what access to my data do they have, and how regulated is that by the current Data Act that the ED has mentioned is there, and from what he said, he's really trying to push through for it. But that we know that Data Protection Act has been coming for a number of years. So does that act foresee or protect me from the future of having private guys have access to or potentially regulate or facilitate my data? So I have a lot of other questions, but I think that for me is the most urgent one, because we all want access, but with access comes access to me as an individual. So I just wanted to ask, with regards to that, how will we perceive that?
Thank you so much for the question. Maybe that gives me an opportunity to create a bit of awareness of how the infrastructure sharing model operates. So we were the same company that was Cell One and Leo, that's now 100% owned by Telecom Namibia. And our model is multiple tenancy. So you build one tower for multiple operators. But now we only focus on the passive, meaning that on the tower itself, there's still structure, and then the operators comes on to deploy their equipment, and they do the active, now what Helen was speaking about, active deployment, so that they can connect with you. So essentially from transmission onward to your phone, that is now in the hands of operators. But the future is radically changing. We're moving into virtual network operators, renting a network, and we foresee that coming into a market where you actually share antennas, because right now we very often say, oh, no, that's not our space, that is now our customer space. But essentially in future, sharing antennas, renting a network, roaming on each other's network will be what will sustain the connectivity in Namibia. And that will obviously cut cost, because now there's no longer capital expenditure. On the operator side, they only have operational expenditure by leasing these facilities from us, and they can then innovate, compete on service, and be able to offer you better product offering. Now on the data, in terms of data centers, in terms of where it's sitting, on whose network, that is a question that goes with the data protection bill, and I think that's well versed with MICT. But I hope it clarifies it for you that we are only on the passive, and then the active, the transmission, the operators are actually responsible for hosting your data. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for the question. Our data protection law is built on grand model laws, including that of SADC and not limited to that of Africa and the world. It is called third-party protection in the law. Given the duration of time that it takes to craft a law and the speed of technological advancement, it is an area that we need to constantly look into, particularly when it comes to implementation of the law.
I think when the bill comes through Parliament, I would really encourage you to take a look at it, because third-party access is addressed. in the bill, and it's and that those elements are sort of benchmarked against the EU's general data protection regulation,
GDPR, yeah.
the GDPR. So, I mean, that stuff is in there, but I mean, GDPR also has its limitations. And I would encourage you to also take a look at the African Convention on Cybersecurity and Privacy and Data Protection, and see what it says there and whether we are in Namibia we have signed and ratified the convention. And so, I mean, it sets out certain standards, and use those texts to see whether the text that eventually emerges in Parliament that is tabled meets those standards. Because, I mean, any modern data protection law has to speak comprehensively to third-party access to your data, because data at the moment is the big discussion point in the tech sector. What is happening to our data? You know.
Yeah, I think on that note also, I think it's also important to note, if we look at it still globally with regards to the people that actually store the data, the data centers. Even though Germany also fought now and said, listen, social media platforms, after they were found out that Twitter and them was spying on Angela Merkel, that the data needs to be localized. A lot of those data centers are still privately owned because it costs millions of dollars, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to set up just a small data center. So the privatization of data centers is already a big concern within the technological world. So there is a need, of course, for that strong statutory framework to be put in place. But at the end of the day, in terms of owning the data centers themselves, it is still largely a private sector issue, because they say once we put that into the hands of government, it's a different conversation. And I mean, Federico will be able to appreciate it opens up now different issues and problems again for that as well. So the data centers themselves are private. The regulation of the flow of the data is with central government through agents such as CRAN and so on. So it's a multi-party issue that we're dealing with going forward. In conclusion, I think thank you so much for all the questions that came in. I would like to, if there are any concluding remarks or low-hanging fruits, but perhaps in as far as access to internet is concerned, if you want to share from the stage, I think let's do that before we close off.
I just want to say the Namibian Parliament has 3 sessions a year. There are 2; those are two very few. I wonder the digital parliament, how many sessions it's going to have. And given the fast transforming world, perhaps a monthly parliamentary session would do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to end off addressing the issue of media information literacy and digital literacy. I mean, I think that is, with what we're seeing, how our online spaces have been polluted. I mean, the information disorder that we're seeing on social media, that we're seeing on, I mean, I've totally soured on Facebook, to be honest, because of the disinformation. And we're seeing the pollution of our WhatsApp groups and our family groups and so on. I think we've reached a point where we seriously have to consider bringing. I mean, we can do as civil society organizations, as Digital Foundation of Namibia, as IPPR, we do, and Mali, we do sort of media information literacy work, but we really need that to come through the school system. I think this is an opportunity. This is another one of those opportunities where we should see what happened here, what's happened in the COVID era, really speaks to us now addressing digital and information literacy and media literacy through the school curriculum. And there is research. I mean, the Finnish ambassador was here. I mean, the EU ambassador was from Finland. Finland has actually done very good work in this space in terms of research and showing how effective media and information literacy is in dispelling disinformation by starting with these sorts of programs in primary school, and seeing how critically primary school pupils engage with information and are not fooled by misinformation encountered online. And I think that's an example we should follow. And I think this has become sort of one of those hot points in our discussions around technology in the COVID era, media and information literacy. And Namibia really needs to step into the space and see how we can address this. And perhaps through foundations such as this, we can now push for that to happen in our school curriculum. And that's something I really would encourage.
From my end, as enablers of connectivity that are providing access to ICT infrastructure for operators to provide you with internet access, we're saying that we hear the pleas, we hear the cries. We really want to do this. We want to deliver 500 towers for sharing purposes, and it is coming, and we need every stakeholder to come on board, be it those who are involved with land, be it those who are involved with environmental clearance, be it those who are involved in funding, to really meet us halfway so that we can realize this objective and reach our Vision 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And finally, extensive media and information literacy program through collaborative partnership is the only way to go if we really want to address also this issue of internet access in Namibia. So I'm urging, private, education institutions, public higher education institutions, the government, and all the other stakeholders to come on board, sit and discuss and come up with a stakeholder engagement plan so that we can address this issue.
Ms. Fusto, any remarks from you concluding, or are we good to go?
Yes, thank you very much. I think what these type of discussion shows is that there is a need for all stakeholders in this space to talk to each other and to find a way to move forward to the benefit of all. We have mentioned today here how important it is that people from a very young age be trained, be told how the importance of media and literacy. I think it is very important that we get the Data Protection Act in bill through as soon as possible, that we get the cybersecurity bill through as soon as possible. I don't know if you've seen the newspapers today. We've had a cybersecurity issue we had a cyber attack at one of well-known companies, PPS of Sanlam. They were recently attacked in South Africa. There is a need for us to talk more, but not only talk, to do. There are lots of ways to do things. And I always use the example, I'm not going to tell a long story, about Home Affairs. You remember the days when at Home Affairs you had these long queues and you had to go 5 o'clock in the morning to get a passport. So that is an ideal opportunity for e-government, because Home Affairs has your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, your death certificate, your ID. They are all issuing these documents. But now what we need to do is we need to go find the original, make copies, go to the police station, stand in a queue for 3 hours, have it stamped, then go back to Home Affairs. At least there's no 5 hours anymore. Then you have to go back 2 or 3 days later, stand in the queue again. This is valuable economic time that we are losing. Why don't we learn from other countries where a passport takes 15 minutes? You go in, they look at the system, you give them your ID. Oh, it's you. Toof, there you have a passport. That is, you should be able to complete the form online, not go to Home Affairs to get a form. It should be online. And I think there we are lagging behind. Yes, we have an access problem, but we also have a sharing of information problem. Thank you so much.
Well, I didn't have to ask for it, but thank you very much. There is your round of applause for our panel for making time out to join us. This was, of course, the first event of the Digital Foundation of Namibia, and at the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum 2021, Drift 21, taking place up until the 30th of April. So please, a round of applause, I think, for the Digital Foundation of Namibia for setting this up. Let me call on one of the directors of the foundation, Ms. Nashilongo Gervasius, to give us the closing remarks for the session. Thank you. Can you just stand on the stage quickly just for a group picture? As she's making her way over to the podium. Thank you.
Are you okay? Yes, please. Gifts, come on. This is a little bit. Just before the gifts coming, I think I'll just quickly deliver my concluding remarks as the Director of Ceremonies have directed. I don't know if it's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by acknowledging the Executive Director in the Ministry of ICT, Mr. Mbeuta Wanjarakana, for being here and for supporting the launch of the Digital Foundation. The Chairperson of the Digital Foundation of Namibia, Mr. Erki Haipinge, very capable chairperson, Ms. Alisa Ampolo, the CEO of CRAN, Ms. Helene Fusluo, the head of research at the Communication Regulators Authority of Namibia, Mr. Federico Links, digital rights researcher and researcher in general and IPPR associate, Dr. Sadrach Shiomeka, who's the lecturer of educational technologies at the University of Namibia. Our supporters and friends online and offline, ladies and gentlemen, I see we also have members of the media here. Thank you very much for being here today at the launch of the Digital Foundation of Namibia, and on behalf of our fellow directors and members, we appreciate your support and your presence here. So in my conclusion here, let me just sum up the word of my chairperson, who said that the foundation is here to serve Namibia and to facilitate full digital competency for all. In amplifying the analysis of our speakers today via the remarks and through the panel, I think we all agree that Namibia is actively pursuing digital conclusion and is also making progress towards protection in relations to data protection and cybercrime. However, greater access still needs to be achieved. As issues of gender, around gender and technology needs urgent intervention, women face online harms daily, and this leads to greater digital exclusion. While we aim to work with various communities to ensure digital skills, we hope that their skills will meet the opportunities, for instance, that the Universal Service and Access Fund will facilitate. The call for making the internet more accessible through pricing also came out very strongly here. And through our advocacy arms, we stand with the rest of Namibia to ask that in order to achieve total inclusion, Namibia should adopt the UN Broadband Commission pricing for data of 2 gigabytes, on household income, percent of the household income. priced at not more than GNI per capita monthly. Both government and private sector should work to make Wi-Fi available in public places. And in addition, government should work to try and ensure connections in all schools, as that is currently an issue. In regards to privacy and protection online, that also came up very strongly in the engagements here today. But with the data protection bill said to be at parliamentary committee level, I think this gives all of us hope. That also goes with the cybercrime bill that is headed for finalization. There's evidence that social media has facilitated greater involvement in public discourse and also allowed for increased access and sharing of information. Overall, social media has also increased internet usage and uptake in the country. We hope that government and partners, that includes us as the Digital Foundation, support the work to ensure full digital competencies and meaningful engagements for all in Namibia. We look forward to work hand in hand with all stakeholders in the education, ICT and development sectors to meet the aspirations of our national goals. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much once again for being here and joining us. My name is Nashilongo and I'll end it here. I'll hand it over to the chairperson. No, to the director of
No, that's fine. Nashilongo has a very long history in broadcasting, and I thought she was almost going to break into, my name is Nashilongo. Thank you for watching the news at 8. But thank you very much, Comrade Director, for that as well. I would like to invite you now for a warm, light dinner before you go home. And this is good news for us bachelors. That means I don't have to go cook tonight. So thank you very much once again for making time out to join us, and enjoy the warm dinner. But before we go down to the stage, as you're walking down, I think you'll receive your gift from Comrade Chair and the director. Yeah, so Ms. Foslu, you'll be the first to come down as you just receive your gift. Handshake, picture. Handshake. There we go. Fantastic. Next one. Doc. In-house. Oh, no, he mustn't receive. It's insider trading. That's it. These are our Twitter celebs. You gotta look nice always. Oh. There we go. Federico is on a vegetarian diet. He doesn't need that, so you can just. Thank you. Oh,